know, number one is that Norma's book will be available. Try it. Professional engineer, originally a real estate developer, very successful businessman, and I doubt very much if 10 or 15 years ago he would have had ever dreamed he would be doing what he's doing now. Would you?
No.
Okay. Kind of like Norma. But the messages have come to him through various ways and various means. He now publishes the Phoenix Journals. A lot of you have gotten those books. A lot of you have reordered them and kept up with the new ones. He's now in the book publishing business. He's been publishing about a book a week, which is some feat. If you know anything about the publishing business, cranking out that much material that often is quite a job. How you keep up with it is a real task. And I don't know how he does it, but he does it. That's the only thing that counts. And a weekly, he also has a weekly publication, the Phoenix Express, which also is published. Direct, as a result of direct transmissions, which he'll tell you about. He used to live here. He has moved to California. Now he's in a safe area, protected area. He is told, and he will bring some things to you that I think will be of great interest, and you will go home with something to think about from this presentation. Welcome, George, as our last speaker this morning. George Green.
Thank you. Want to use this? This one's not working. Use this one? Okay. Thank you, everybody, for showing up since I'm around for the last one for the day, as in the last one on the program. To give you a little bit of background of how I got this job that I have right now, basically. About 32 years ago, George, this is more powerful. Can you use it? Try this one. Better? Yes. Yeah. Okay. To give you a little bit of background of myself, 32 years ago, I was stationed at Edwards Air Force Base. I was an enlistment airman. My specialty code was airborne radio communications. One morning, I had done a post-flight inspection on the X-15. And the X-15 at that time was the forerunner of the space shuttle, and it was the most secret thing that we had. I had about 30 miles left to do on my Jeep. You have to do so many miles a day. And when I decided to run out to the north edge of Edwards Air Force Base, there's several hangars that I hadn't visited, and opened up or looked inside of one of the hangars, and inside was a flying saucer about 30 feet across, silver in shape, very unusual looking, and of course that's a new plane. I mean, I get to go work on it, right? So I ran back to the squadron, and I walked in, and I says, when do I get to go work on the flying saucer? And the commander looked back at me and he says, George, that's a new ion-powered craft designed by Sikorsky. It's used for outer space. And I says, well, fine, when do I get to work on it? And he said, you're not. So I said, okay. I went back to my room in the afternoon, and I talked to my buddy, who happened to be the base photographer, and I says, when do I get a picture of that? He gave me the pictures of the other stuff. And he says, what they're telling you is not correct. What it really is an alien craft. And he showed me the pictures of the craft along with two alien bodies, which were about 39 inches tall and reptilian looking. That little upset me a little bit, so the next morning when I reported in, I asked the commander, I said, why didn't you level with me? And he looked at me and he says, when the government is ready to tell the public, they will. Well, I accepted that as a good enlisted man, swore to all my good things, and then anything happened. I went about my business. So 2 weeks later, they transferred me to Japan, to a non-existent base. So I had about a month running around Tokyo on the taxpayers' expense, and they finally assigned me to a MAT squadron, and then subsequently I went to a reassignment in Mississippi, then reassigned into guided missiles, and there I went into missile guidance systems, again in electronics. I spent about 2.5 years in school with the Air Force. Spent a little over 4.5 years, or a little over 4 years. And at that point, I got out on an early out. Believe it or not, I was over 4 years, and yet I got an early out so I could go to Colorado School of Mines. So I studied a little engineering there. Meanwhile, I had done several other things. while I was in the service. Well, the story ended at that point. I knew that we had flying saucers. I had nothing going on. I went out and entered into the business community. I ended up being in real estate development, as they said. I also went into the securities business and insurance business. I had all kinds of things I've been in and out of, made money, lost money, all kinds of things like everybody does. At any rate, in 1985, I built a house for a friend of mine up in Aspen. And his maid had a book and it said UFO Contact from the Pleiades. And I looked at those pictures and it just stunned. Here was colored pictures of almost the same identical craft that I saw at Edwards Air Force Base. And it would just amaze me. I said, I have to have one of those books. Something compulsed me to get it. Well, I was doing some building in Phoenix at that time. So what I did was end up flying down there, and that would be the people who did the publishing on it. And I went in there and talked to him. His name was Lee Elders. And Lee, I said, I had to have that book. And he said, we didn't have any. We were totally sold out. Well, right at that time, I had the ability to go ahead and take care of these things, and he said he needed financing to do a volume 2. Well, we did a volume 2 of the picture book. Some of you may have it. Well, Lee has a real funny thing about him. He likes to get the money for doing it, but he doesn't pay it back. So we ended up with a lawsuit. Now I felt some compulsion to get around him to get the information out to the world. Well, I hopped a plane. My wife and I took off and went to Switzerland. This is where the case occurred. Now the case, what happened is Billy Meyer, a Swiss farmer, one-armed, was given a job, similar to what I was given, only his job was a little bit more profound. He was allowed to come aboard the craft. He was allowed to take photographs. And what I'm going to do is share with you some of the photographs right now, what he had seen, to give you an idea of what his mission was. Now, he has no money, still doesn't have anything, and he had been in contact with the Pleiadians directly. Now, in these photographs, well, I think we can turn the light down now and I'll start them, to give you an idea, a little bit of history as this goes down the line. And this is Billy Meyer, and he's about 53 years old right now. We'll go to the next one. This is a craft that was similar to the one I saw at Edwards Air Force Base. I didn't see the antenna when I was at Edwards, but that's similar to the craft that I saw. Let's go to the next one. That's another one that is similar to the craft. You notice that it's hovering right here by the tree. They say in order for the craft to be stable, they use the tree as a grounding device. So you can see how clear it is and how set it up. Billy was allowed to sit with his tripod, let's go to the next one, and take pictures of these craft. He was first contacted by, what do you call, our space brother Semyasi. This is a line drawing of her. They didn't want a photograph taken of her because she does walk among us. She appears to be approximately 35 years old, but you have to add about 100 times that, or not 100 times that. She's about 350 years old. They live to be 1,000 years old. Next picture. These are actual photographs that were taken of two others that were aboard the spacecraft. The reason why they were blurry, again, they allowed this one out because you can just see the features. They wouldn't allow the clarity to come out because they do walk among us and they didn't want to be conspicuous. Next picture. That's another craft that's on the other side of the tree. Next one. There is a series. There are 3 craft, as you see right here. I believe this is the one, I can't quite tell. There was a French Mirage fighter that made about 20 passes on the craft. And it is of evidence today, but nothing ever happened. The biggest craft here is a manned craft. The little one is a drone. They're using that to basically monitor the air sampling all over the world, so that occasionally you'd see those. Let's go to the next one. That's just a view to show you the background with one next to the tree and the sun sparkling off of it. Now these are photographic marvels. A friend of mine, his name is Wally Gentleman, won the Academy Award for producing the 2001, the special effects. He said he could recreate these photographs, but his budget would have to be about $5 million. And he said no one-armed person, and he investigated the case himself, no one-armed person with the technology available could do this. Go ahead. That's a picture. If you'll notice, the craft is above the town. This town is a little place outside of Zurich, Switzerland. It's about 30 miles out. It's a beautiful country. The town is called Hinterschmidt-Rudy. The craft sat over town for at least an hour. Next picture. As you can see, he put his tripod down so you could get some ideas of the dimensions and everything else that were out. Next picture, please. Just another picture with trees as they're going down. We actually have this photograph in moving pictures so you can watch the craft going across the whole landscape. Next picture. I thought you'd like this one. This happens to be a Volkswagen camper. This is a little trailer behind and the road going. See the size of the craft? They have several variations of crafts, like we have, you know, a Pinto to a Lincoln Continental. And the reason why I'm showing you the photographs is to give you some verification that they're very physically manifested. Let's go to the next one. This happens to be Billy Meyer's house. This is the latest variation of craft. These little balls that go around the craft appear to be gravity wave amplifiers that actually cause zero gravity. This craft here can go from here to the Pleiades, according to them, in less than 5 minutes. It used to take them 8 hours, so they speeded up the equipment. This is a two-man craft. Let's go to the next picture. You saw that on the ground. Here's the next one raised up. And I don't know what these little red lines, all I know is when they do light up at night, they'll be there. And I don't know what all the rest of this material is. Actually, I should ask them sometime a little bit more about the picture, and I will. Next picture. Whoops. Did a good one, didn't we? The craft was inside the tree, the same one, but it's upside down. Whoops. Okay. This is Billy Meyer before he had his beard. An interesting thing happened. Billy was given, this is a laser weapon right here. See the little red end on it? Billy was given a job with Semyosi. They had to go wipe out a bee colony. They said there was a strain of bees that was introduced that was very deadly to the population, and they felt under their determination that they could go ahead and allow Billy to go help get rid of this pest that was going to invade. So he got to play with it. Now this is in the front yard. Go to the next one. This is one of the girls who's with him, and this is the latest in clothing styles. You can see a little bit of it. It wouldn't allow her to photograph all the way, but that's the weapon again, pointing the other direction. Okay, next picture. That's Billy pointing again back to his house. Okay. That's a hole in the tree that Billy did with that laser weapon. Now, a real interesting thing happened when the day that Billy and I, or Desiree and I were up with Billy. I told Billy I wanted to go out and take some pictures of this tree. There's this hole here, and there's also one about 30 feet up. And he says, it's okay, George, you can go do that, but you're only allowed to take 3 pictures. Now, I had a little Ricoh camera, 35 millimeter, fully automatic, and it was like number 21, 22, 23. I did take the pictures, and I have them, and I'm not going to, they're the same as this, basically. What had happened is, as I walked back down towards his house, he had built a little waterfall down there, and on the top of it, it says Semyosi Silver Star Center, and I thought that would be a unique picture, so I took my 4th picture. As I didn't think anything more about it, except for when I come back to the United States and develop the film, 21, 22, and 23 were perfect of the tree, but number 24 was blank. Never happened to me before, and never happened anything. This is verification for me for a little later, because I'll tell you what has happened since. Next picture. Oh, that's upside down, but you'll still get the idea. This is the landings that they're talking about all over the United States and around the world, right where the craft comes down. You see the burn marks where the craft lands on the ground. What it does is the energy that's come off of the craft actually causes a breakdown of the particles in the grass, and so it will die temporarily. But when it comes back, it comes out twice as thick, and just the bugs come all over. Do the next picture. You can see what happened. Now, Billy's sitting there with a friend of his. They're measuring. There was 3 of them in this place, 3 different places where they came down. Now this is in the middle of summer. Notice the green? They just got through mowing the wheat where the craft land. Now the same thing occurs during the wintertime. Next picture. At Billy's house again, remember that craft that landed? Look at that perfect circle. To give you an idea of the size, see how the Volkswagen and how the dogs are looking. It just gives you an idea that there's some tremendous energies that are coming off. Next picture. This picture, as you will notice the light, remember Norma was talking about, and as everybody else says, everything is light. How they change from here to the Pleiades, they change the physical manifestation back to light, and from that point on, it departs back to the Pleiades or wherever they're going. This is non-physical. This particular photograph was taken just as it was getting the reverse situation. It was coming from the light into physical manifestation. This is at nighttime to get an idea just as the background is going. So you just have a pure light image. So when you hear about stories of lights going around, and there are a lot of small balls that go around that are probes that they set on, and they have the equipment basically to neutralize gravity and go anywhere they want to go, and this just happens to be a visible area for you so you can see it yourself. Next picture, please. To me, this is the most fascinating picture of all. Remember when Norma and the rest of them were telling you, and we all said, let's surround ourselves with light and energy? This is light and energy manifested. This is Billy Meyer with his hand up in the air. If you look real close, you'll see his feet down below, and he's in there. They surrounded him with an energy glow. That is manifested energy. Some strange things have been happening to me lately since I've accepted my mission. The energy around me is so heavy, sometimes when I'm going down the street, my car, the night lights at the corner lights keep going out as I go by. So, real interesting actions. Next picture. This is a nighttime photograph, car there and the craft at night. I don't know how the illumination came about, but they're supplying this energy to do it. Next picture. Underneath, now this craft is up in the air. See these little red globules? It has something to do with their radiating. That's the heat energy. Remember when it landed down on top of the ground? You saw the ice melt, and you see the rest of it. Something has been giving off on that. Now, it is radiation that they're using. Some of the technologies that they have do not use the same technology that's used to melt the ice. They had one tree that they were circling around several times and making the movie, or we were allowed to make a movie of it. And what happened, they were measuring the radiation of the tree, and if you went back over there, the tree doesn't exist, and they said, well, they changed its time, which is merely meaning that they can warp time and things can happen. Next page. That's the craft again, illuminated with the sun. They just right in front of the sun. Next picture. The commander that Billy had been in contact with was named Semyasi. Semyasi was under direct contact. His commander, or her commander rather, or the commander-in-chief, was this man who is Sananda, or Emmanuel. They allowed a line drawing of it. Okay, from that point, I think I'm through with the slide presentation, and now I'll tell you the rest of the story. When I was in Switzerland with Billy, Quetzal was the commander of the craft. The Semyasi was there, the main craft, their mothership and such. And they were there were several people that were in continuous communication with Billy. He was given the job to give the world the most and the best pictures as well as the information. He was also given metal samples that could be researched out. Most of those have disappeared. The pictures, there's several hundred of them around, and we do have the movies and things to go along with it, but it's like everybody else, everybody gets highly skeptical. The information that he has is in German. There's about 2,000 pages of it. I have the 2,000 pages of notes. We have some of it that is somewhat translated into English. And when I was working with Billy, he got a message, just like Norma did, from the commander and asked if I would agree to be their new contract person in Switzerland to get the information out, because I had helped Lee Elders publish the book before. So logical extension of that to me, of course, I was excited. Here I was. I'm involved with a real project going on, and the ETs are helping Billy, and he's got all this evidence. I naturally wanted to do that. So I said, certainly. So the first thing we did, we agreed to do that. We flew back to the States, and I got started on the project. And the picture that you saw was Emmanuel. One of the documents Billy had given me was a document written by Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot was the scribe. He's the only one that could write at the time of Jesus. He wrote what was going on exactly at that time into this document. It was called the Talmud Emmanuel. That was the document that was given to us over there. It was given to Billy by a Greek priest who has been killed. The Greek priest was contacted by the Palladians prior to that, and they took him to the tomb where they gave him the documents to translate from Aramaic into Greek. Billy's wife is Greek. They ended up translating it from Greek to German. Then we had it, and Desiree must have spent 3 months trying to translate it with the people that we had from German to English. And it's a real problem because there's so many words that are so much different. Well, we kept communicating with Billy. This is the only document that I could agree to go ahead and publish because, as it turned out, Billy had signed a contract with Lee Elders for the worldwide rights to his story. This is the man I had just sued on the story before. So naturally, I had a kind of a dead area. I contacted my attorneys to break the contract. And the contract was easily breakable, like you get Lee and Billy to sign agreements. Lee wouldn't sign anything with me because he'd been caught. And Billy won't leave Switzerland. He's scared to death of what's going to happen. So we just didn't do anything. But we did agree to publish the book, the Talmud Emmanuel. We printed 200 copies of it, but we had so many mistakes in it that Billy agreed that it was not right to get it out to the public. End of story. Nothing else happened. We got involved with the UFO studies, and Desiree and I were traveling around, and we met Wendell Stevens, who was part of that story that went in Switzerland. And Wendell gave us some of his books, and we helped distribute all of his material for a while. And then lo and behold, for some reason, Desiree and I decided we didn't want to have another cold winter in Denver. Now, I'm an avid Denverite, But remember how it was 2 years ago? We had 10 days, and it was 25 below solid. I said, this is enough. So she's from San Diego. We moved down to San Diego. We got ourselves a place in San Diego and lived there for a while. And I thought, well, I had some people down there, and I was going to go build another hotel. I mean, that's what I've been doing. And the guy said, we'll make sure you get it done. Well, lo and behold, on October the 18th of last year, so that's only a few months ago to tell you the changes of what's happening to me, October the 18th, I received a document in the mail, and on the front of the document it says the following people under my protection. And it listed about 40 people, and there was Wendell Stevens and Bill Cooper, myself and Desiree, and some other people. I said, and this is really a strange letter. Number one, I didn't know I need to be protected, and the second thing, I didn't know who this Hatton character was. I mean, what would you do if you get something like that? So it got my curiosity up. So what I did was call around to everybody I could find out. A lot of them didn't know anything about it, and one couple said, yeah, we'll tell you about it. So I set up an appointment, and we met in Victorville, California, at noon. And instead of me meeting the people, I ended up spending 4.5-hour conversations with Yerjo Sirius Hatton, the commander of the craft that's over the United States. And he reminded me of my agreement that I made in Switzerland, that I agreed to print the stuff, and then he also reminded me a few other things. And another document that he handed me was the Talmud Emmanuel. They renamed it I Am Sananda, or the Emmanuel document, I Am Sananda. He gave it to me totally translated in English and perfect. Some more verification, something going on, right? The next thing that happened in the same conversation, he reminded me of the photographs. Now, nobody knew about that. The fourth one was blank. Some other interesting thing happened on that same thing. I'm verifying who I'm talking to, right? Afterwards. There's a Professor Jim Deerdorf up in Oregon who had taken the same document, has written a book on it. And he has done the translations and been working on the same document, but he went to Switzerland to verify it the same way. He was given the same story, go take 4 pictures. He took his 3 pictures, or he didn't take 3 pictures. His 4th picture, his camera jammed, and he and I related the same thing. So there's just some strange things that are happening on there. Well, at this point, after the 4.5-hour conversation, which related to all the stuff that went on and what I had been doing with all these people and Lee Elders, and they seemed to know everything I was doing. Everything. We ended up with the same thing, that I would agree to publish the material. I asked him, I said, it takes a long time to edit this material, and it takes a long time to put books together, and he says, we have information that must get out to the public in haste. And we must do it immediately. Don't do anything, no editing. You must promise not to do that. So what we did, the first 6 journals were published exactly the way they come off of the computer. So you see them, the first green ones that I had. Subsequently, because of the freight and the time and everything else, we've reduced them down to the small size, and we're going to continue at that point. Well, I didn't realize how much information they were going to give us, and I didn't realize also the other people I was involved with, and all of a sudden now we're in communication with like 7 or 8 different commanders, and they're coming through more than one source at this minute. We're getting, some people will start the paragraph and other ones will end it, and they all talk about each other. So we're getting more verification within ourselves. The Phoenix journals, and they were named the Phoenix journals because of the name of their craft above us. The craft is approximately, what I understand, some 8,000 miles across. 8,000 miles across. It's highly visible to anybody that want to see it. Yeah, you look at me. It's not a question, what they're telling us, don't worry about us being up there. There are several cultures that are coming around to look at the planet at the end times as prophesied. So you will see them in the heavens all over. And what you look for is strobing stars. Now stars don't strobe, but you'll see stars up there that are going red, blue, green, and they can move around. You'll see them. But they are huge. Some of them are little. They also bring down the physical craft, like the little ones we were showing you. When Desiree and I first got involved with this, we had to go do our own verification a little bit and check some things out. And we had one of those craft follow our car for about 45 minutes, just so Desiree can know it was out there. And she'll tell you about it. She's, you know, that silver object just followed us. That's all, just to let us know that they were out there watching what we were doing. That's to give us some verification. Well, the further we got into the information and the agreement, they started transmitting the information to us. And at this point, we're receiving some days we only get like 12 pages, and other days we get 80 pages of material. And they tell us where to put it. So I don't have to do any editing. We don't have to do anything. The agreement is that there's any obvious misspellings, because sometimes they do that. They even talk about it in the books. They hate our language. Well, the original languages they were using, but they've been watching this for, I don't know how old they are, because some of them, they say they've been around here for thousands of years, and some of the communications that we're getting right now, they were talking that they were there as the United States Constitution was formed. They say this was a nation under God, and the impetus, the first 7 months that we've been doing this up to this recent point, the emphasis was giving us the background so you could know what the problems were involved into our history and identifying the massive lies that have been given to us. Now, a lot of these are things that are so profound, and some things you'll sit there in disbelief and you say, this can't be, and yet what it does is gnaws at you and say, wait a minute, maybe they are lying to me. It's like Bush says, read my lips. Well, they go into the background and they tell you what Bush is up to. They say in the books, for the ones that haven't read the books yet, and they're back at our table, the Phoenix Journals, and the people that, by the way, if you have a pencil, we have an 800 number. You can write it down. It's 1-800-729-4131. And if you call, we can get you answers to about anything you want. They will communicate with anybody on a direct basis. And we have a weekly newspaper like our Tom, that's called the Weekly Express, which I gave everybody a copy of the one. We have another one that was supposed to have been delivered Friday, but I'm sure it'll be here Monday. UPS didn't deliver their overnight service. Okay? Anyway, excuse me. Yeah, the number was 1-800-729-4131. So you can call that anytime. And just leave your name, we'll send you information, or if you have any questions. Anybody that answers that number are in direct contact with our friends, so they can answer any question that you have also, because it's not just me. At the time you call. Yeah, generally call during the week, but sometimes during the weekend, I just come off the radio, so there's a lot of people over there listening right now. But during the week is the best time, during the daytime. At any rate, the information as such is such that they will tell you any answer to any question about anything. We are in direct contact with Emmanuel. I gave you the opening speech that I asked him to open the meeting with, and I believe it's very profound. It's really more profound as I start to understand when we communicate directly with Haton, his energy shifts and we end up communicating with Aton. And people who look up under the history of who Aton is the one God. It's in charge of the whole works and is giving Katumi and everybody else is under the total command of that. And my understanding, my own personal understanding is this: Emmanuel was given the job 2,000 years ago to come forth and tell the world what the Creator's laws are. He also said, in 2,000 years I come forth to bring the Word, and the Word is being brought forth in our books. And that's what they're telling us. They're also telling us that the future generations will take these books and look at them as the Dead Sea Scrolls to see actually what is happening at this time. And what they are saying is each one of us has the individual responsibility to understand where we are at, how we're connected, and they want to contact each of us, because each one of us is a little spark of Aton or God. But most of us come into this veil of darkness. We come into this life without knowing our previous life, our previous lives, or what our mission is. It's an agreement that we've made. Now is the time that we have to awaken. And what they're telling us this week, again, is like I told you and what you got from Sananda, we have to look at our Constitution. Like the material that's going on in the Middle East right now. I'm sorry I didn't have the express to give you because it's about the lie in the Middle East. There is no war. As a matter of fact, I had them fax over a transmission from 2 days ago, and I'll give you a little bit of their answer for the Middle East, and you can think about it. This was, this says, Haton present to speak of things great and small, that you may find balance and direction on this, the first day of your 4th year in counting. Remember the harmonic convergence? That is the day they use 2 dates on all their transmissions, and they use the harmonics as the date of the new counting. So they call this, actually Friday was the first day that we all talked about. And then this is the title, and this will probably be in one of the books or the Express, I don't know yet. They tell us where it goes. Your youngsters in the military forces have been trained and brainwashed into war. They have been drilled and exercised into killings, and they hunger for blood. Watch their faces as they move off, afraid there may not be a war. They still play at Rambo and mighty warrior encounters. How sorely disappointed they shall be to find heat, sand, blood, and worthless sacrifice of their precious physical evidence. And you have allowed it to come to this in your blindness. In your foolish blindness, you are sending your children into incredible circumstance, and at the same time render yourself more helpless, for with them goes your defenses. We have nobody left in the United States. If there was ever a good time, however, to attend your shelter thrusts, it is now. It's an interesting paragraph, because the first time he's brought that up. You will be told that America is safe and that your allies, such as Israel, are your only ones with nuclear capabilities, and they are protecting you. They're not. Further, there are dozens of countries able to blast you off the map with installations in or near your very own country. The whole of the United States is actually hostage. Watch that which is unfolding in front of you and your eyes and ears, and the lies being unfolded unto you. Watch as the entity Bush has no time for interviews. That one is not informed, which the reporters follow around, and he is not given information to give forth, and you must pay attention. Listen to what is flung back and forth like toddlers at play. Mr. Bush calls Hussein a liar, and then when Hussein tells the truth and that Mr. Bush is the greatest liar of all upon your globe, you anger and bash and scream. To tell you thousands of Americans are being shuttled into hostage positions, what would you do? What you did was to shuttle some of your own citizens, the Japanese Americans, into your own concentration camps. Why would Iraq and Kuwait allow anyone to depart in view of the fact that once clearing, the bombing will start? Actually, your country will probably not wait to clear your own people. Further, it is said today there are less than 3 dozen people moved. That would seem a far cry from thousands. Now, you understand they're in contact with everybody on the entire globe. So they set in on every conversation that's going on between our leaders. And that's what our Weekly Express is about. They will tell you the truth behind the truth. You're going to have to discern it. They do tell us a lot of information about what's going to happen on the economy, all the lies that have been given to us, like Jonestown Massacre. The Hubble telescope never went up. It's sitting in White Sands, New Mexico. Proof of that is, why would you spend $1.5 billion and all these scientists on a craft and not allow one of the scientists to be there when the Hubble was sent up? The Hubble would have shown the Soviets have total control of our skies. Now, if I'm instilling any fear in you, it's not meant to do that. What is it meant to is God says, I love you so much I have to show you the way. You have to know what's happening to you. Don't you know? If you have the knowing, then in turn you'll be able to make corrections. And each one of you have the responsibility now to start looking at what's happening to our Constitution. As Sananda said, 4 more states, all they have to do is vote 4 more states to ask for the ratification of the Constitution. We have a book back here, it's called The Rape of the Constitution. They'll show you all the places that's already been changed because you don't know what happened. In the last 2-3 months, we've been bugging a lot in the news about the Flag Amendment. The Flag Amendment passed July 7th, 1976, passed into law. Part of that amendment said if they need to modify it or do anything they wanted to, all the president had to do was do it. They do that to get the public off of what's really happening so they can add the little amendments as they merge toward the plan of merging the United States with Russia and making slaves of us. This is the problem that we're getting. God has come forth with this information in the Phoenix Journals to let you look at what's happened before, what is happening now, and how we as mankind can help with the help of our celestial brothers. And it's coming, they're coming from the Pleiades, they're coming from everywhere. We're talking about Jesus or Sananda and God working with us as a nation to try to bring it back. The unfortunate thing, when I look at the symbol on the book, the Phoenix, the United States, has to rise out of the ashes. Now, coming out of the ashes means that we're going to go through these collapses. And people want to tell me when the collapses occur. Let's take a look at some facts, and I'm a real heavy reader. I look at the Wall Street Journal this last week. In the Wall Street Journal, the following things happened. A week ago Friday, the U.S. Treasury offered to the United States $16 billion worth of bonds. Only $9 billion were sold. September 30th of this year, 1990, is our fiscal year, the government fiscal year. That's when the bonds roll over. 60% of our bonds are owned by the Japanese. November 15th, this is in the Wall Street Journal, November 15th of this year, Resolution Trust Corporation, the one that's handling all of the savings and loan fiasco, is going to auction off all of the properties that they have. They haven't told you the truth. There is $1 trillion worth of real estate. According to the calculators aboard the spacecraft, they say it appears that real estate will drop down to 10 cents on the dollar everywhere. The unemployment rate in the United States is probably close to 25%. We need a war. The reason why the calculations that you see at this point, when they tell you that we have a 5.6 or 5.7 unemployment rate, is because they count only the people that are drawing unemployment benefits. After you use the 26 weeks of unemployment benefits, you're considered employed. How many people do you know right now that are unemployed longer than 6 months? This is the problem. They don't tell you everything. This last year, Gorbachev came over, signed a treaty. That's more than anything else, to take the rest of the wheat that we had in production for this year and in storage. We no longer have any food back up. All the gold that was in Fort Knox is gone or is pledged to foreign countries because they're demanding payment in gold. Oil companies controlled by the big money people. What's going on in Kuwait? I have my own personal feelings. Japan's got its notes due. Japan can cease to run if it doesn't have oil. Maybe it'll force them to roll over the notes September 30th. It's come up pretty quick, right? The indications are, and they're telling us, that we're in a massive recession right now, but it's going to escalate. Japan lost 10% in their stock market in the last 2 days. What's going to happen to ours? It's going to go to nothing. because there's nothing behind it. Last year, I was a stockbroker. I had my own firm. The Federal Reserve told all brokerage firms in the United States, we will loan you the money to make sure you buy the stocks. Brokerage firms have to buy stocks. They're market makers. There's always a buyer, it's the brokerage firm. What if the brokerage firm doesn't have any more money and he's borrowing it from the Federal Reserve, which is a non-constitutional entity? Federal Reserve is a private corporation. It's not a government institute. They got a good deal to break us. They loan money to the world and to everybody, and if we don't pay, the United States taxpayer pays. We are $9 trillion in debt, $20,000 per second every hour of the day. We are going down the hill. Where are we going to get the money to pay it? You as an American taxpayer. Only way we can do is go back to the Constitution. The Constitution says we can't have private people running the money. Only the government prints money. But the Federal Reserve is doing the printing. And the Internal Revenue Service, which is illegal, and we all know that, because the 16th Amendment was never ratified, is nothing more than a private agency as a collection agency for the Federal Reserve. So we have to address demanding that our congressmen and our senators bring us back into the light of what this nation is about. And what they're telling us, if we don't take it, the United States, the rest of the world is going to see, because what is awakening right now in the Middle East and the rest of the things, you can go all over the world at this minute, and you're going to find bankruptcies, house foreclosures, and everything that's going on in the whole world is the same as happening right here. I have property in Denver that's lost 40% in value. I have others I've given back to banks. I have friends of mine that's given more than that. It's just an interesting thing because the banks can't get rid of it either. And we're all geared to living and surviving and running around with everything. The whole planet is polluted. The Pleiadians tell me that we were engineered, this planet, for 500 million people. 1907, the atomic bomb was dropped. Anybody knew that? First atomic bomb dropped in 1907 in Tunguska, Siberia. It was dropped by Colonel Youngblood in the British Army. He got the information from the Tibetan monks. They also got the information on what the planet was like prior to that, and what they were trying to do was tilt the Earth on its axis in order to cause a massive population shift, because they also found at that time that the Earth itself could only sustain 500 million people. The people with money, the controllers, if you would look at it, knew this, and so they said, let's how we can put together the system and make money on it. So they create wars. We've all been reading about the Bilderbergers in Switzerland, how they loaned money to Russia and the Germans. They had money to all sides. Didn't make any difference what happened. They owned it all. Well, guess what? Same thing. They've got it all over the world right now. The controlling factor is money, and that's what's going on at this minute. They also found out, it was interesting, and I talked to Dr. Sneed about this, and she's mentioned the same thing as well as Eustace Mullins, this whole controlling thing, the conspiracy in the medical profession. If you look up the AMA, it was started by two guys who didn't even have a medical license. They were just promoters. And they got going around. They wanted to get everybody organized so they could get their fees. And that's how the AMA started. And all of a sudden, they got some big financial backing. The Rockefellers. The Rockefellers set it up, and all of a sudden, you find the Rockefeller Foundations behind all of the hospitals, the AMA, and all pharmaceutical companies in the United States. You will find on the board of directors a Rockefeller. You'll also find a Rockefeller on the board of directors of every newspaper, every major newspaper, every radio station, major network, including CNN. They just announced it. Remember, David agreed to be on as the board of directors of CNN. So all information comes through the Council of Foreign Relations, which means all the news you get, they have all been given the same script, and it's not necessarily the truth. So when you turn the TV on, you got to be very careful what they're giving you, because it's the same group that's controlling all of this collapse and plan to merging the United States with Russia. Their theory was, and they told you in the history books, we're going to take the United States without firing a shot. They have opened the borders, but they haven't given up the space. East Berlin is an example. Are they screaming over there because German soldiers the Russian soldiers are still walking up and down the streets? Yes, and we're still paying them. And also other thing, the drugs. Bush himself signed the agreements with Noriega to control the cocaine and things coming out of Colombia. My wife and I were in Costa Rica and we were discussing it. They say, you guys don't know what's going on up here. The Colombians are going to sink the United States because some of the agreements were going on with Bush. They were getting a little greedy down there what happened. And the facts of the matter is that group says, wait a minute, we're laundering all the money through Panama. Noriega will supply his army, 12,000 people. That's peanuts to the money we're getting in. Bush was the president and CEO of Zapata Oil Company. Zapata Oil Company has all the offshore oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. They have 176 ships. Under that, they say fishing. They bring in fish meal. Fish meal looks exactly like cocaine. Because Zapata Oil Company has the offshore platforms, they're allowed to take the drugs back and forth without going through customs. He was the president and CEO of Zapata Oil Company, and somehow the CIA got him involved in this thing, and he thought it was a good deal for his country because the people in the covert operations couldn't get any more money. So what they did, they brought him into the deal. He got moved into his next promotion, moved into the CIA, became the head of the CIA, and where is he now? Nothing's changed. What's going on in Panama? Bush, personally, with his brother Preston, have $350 million invested in Panama. They own the Marriott Hotel down there. That alone is enough to get him impeached because he told the world he had $3.5 million. That's a fact. That was reported in the Los Angeles Times, a full page on it. Anybody do anything about it? Nobody knows about these little things. What is happening is, I'll tell you some other things. Henry Kissinger, flying back and forth to China, was controlling the drug trade. The Henry Kissinger you see now is not the real Henry Kissinger, by the way. You know, we all have stand-ins when things that are happening. Like the president has a stand-in. You don't get anybody shot, right? Well, Henry and Nancy Kissinger were killed in an airplane crash. Nancy Kissinger was flubbing her lines, the duplicate. And so they get a divorce. That's convenient, right? So you see the little, and there's people here in the audience that have seen Henry in the last 2 weeks, and I'm sure they will tell you that's not the same one, am I right? There are people that they'll tell you he's smaller, he doesn't the same person, because they can duplicate anything. I will tell you that all of these questions and all of the answers are located in the journals. And we only have a few minutes left that I can answer at this minute. If you have a question or two, I'd be glad to.
Yeah, how do we get out of it? I mean,
how do we get out of it?
We got to do they give us any ways that we can help out?
The question is, do our celestial brothers give us ways to do it? What they do is they'll identify the problem, they'll identify the solution, and yes, they're telling exactly how to do it. If you go through the journals, all you do is underline in yellow the sentences start to do, and they'll tell you everything to do. And they'll tell you what to do on any subject that goes to your heart. So whether it's in the medical profession or whether it's in spiritual, anything you want to know, because they want us to awaken mankind. Anna?
What I wanted to know was whether that 1907 bomb, was that the one that was reported to be a meteor?
The question was the 1907 bomb reported to be the meteor, and the answer is yes. It didn't work, by the way. They missed it by 1 hour. They calculated the wrong, the time zone according to the information. If they'd been 1 hour different, they would have succeeded. Insanity is what's ruling the world right now, and we have to turn around and take back our rights. Aileen? Yes?
If the Hubble telescope is not aloft, then did man actually go to the moon? And if not, wherefore came the picture that we have seen that's been so popular of the Earth?
The question is, we call it the space travesty. That's the book that they're doing right now. And it's totally fascinating because unfortunately John Glenn didn't go anywhere. The first 3 space shuttles we had were total failures. Most of them ended up in Australia, or they fly the teams back up to White Sands, New Mexico, because there's a huge base down it, and then they'd fly them from there to Edwards Air Force Base. The last shuttle that went up 2 weeks ago, was blown out of the air by the Soviets. They have total control of the skies. They have new weapons that they developed in the 40s. I mean, I have to go into some detail. I don't have time. But in 1940, the Germans were flying flying-saucers. Most of the flying saucers that you see over the United States and all over the world right now are our own craft, which really makes you more fearful than what they've done is not develop the weapon technology. Weapon technology is by the beam weapons that they have. The beam weapons, again, are so powerful that they can go to 10 feet of armor plate at 125 miles. And so accurate you can put a quarter on a football field and they can hit it 24 hours a day. They took down the plane over in Korea. They also send out a beam, and you're not going to like listening to this. There's a frequency, 6.66 hertz, which is being transmitted by the satellites right now over the United States. It's a frequency that affects your brain. It's causing a dullness and a lethargic and a just plain, like Corton says, we are becoming sheeple. Sheeple. That's what he says. He says, wake up. This frequency is continually, and the only way you're going to get around it is ask individually for protection of the light, and that's all you have to say. Please protect you. Yes?
Well, if these guys are up there and they've got all these powers, why don't they just blow those satellites out for us?
They're not allowed to interfere with us. The question was whether or not the ETs would interfere. They're allowed to only interfere if it goes above 125 miles, the nuclear area. Otherwise, they're going to watch. They will help us. They cannot interfere.
And who decided that?
That's the Creator's laws. I don't know. They don't even answer some of the questions we had. Yes?
How do we see that 8,000-mile ship?
Just look up at the sky. You'll see several of them.
But I haven't seen
You haven't looked for it. I just told you what to look for. Look at the star, the system of the Orion, and look at the right angle and left angle, and you'll see two craft. One on the right is Haton, on the left is Semyonsi, and they're strobing. Stars don't strobe. She told me my time's up to put me out of jerk. If you want more information again, you can come back to our table. I'm having a workshop tomorrow morning to go into economics, how we can protect yourselves, a little bit more information, so you can sure sign up for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, George. Two things before you go, please hold it just a moment. Michael Rice forgot to mention that he will